haters see. Where them haters at? Where them haters at? Where them haters at?
Well, there you have it. I want to welcome you to Show Up, not show out, but show up. We are going to be talking about shifting your imposter syndrome into your superpower and taming your inner critic. I thank you for registering and showing up already for this webinar. I am planning to pack this as much as possibly, as much as I can into this brief webinar and giving you an opportunity to work with me if you would like to do that. And after this webinar, I think you will. I think you're going to want more. I hope you're going to want more because I want to see you growing and walking into your light as well. Right? So this is, for some of you, this is just the start. For some of you, this is another step in your journey, right? And wherever you are is awesome, is great because, hey, we're going to talk about showing up today and we're going to give you some tips on how you can do that. And some of these things you may already be doing, right? But we're going to talk about some additional options that may work well for you, that may work for a friend of yours. And we are all going to get ready to just walk on into, hey, our fulfillment, right? Our growth. And so before I jump into that, I'm getting all excited. Let me tell you who I am, right? I'm about to jump on into the content here. So I am Dr. Tisley Medley, and most people just call me Dr. T. I'm a counseling psychologist and a life coach. I have a long history of mental wellness and higher education and other things. What's most important, though, is I am passionate about helping couples build fulfilling relationships. I'm passionate about helping women of color recover from their perfectionism. And I am passionate about guiding future therapists and mental health providers toward confidence in their careers. And so I do all of those things depending on the day and the time. I'm also a lover of music of almost every type, but my favorite is 90s R&B, right? 90s R&B and all things psychology. All right, so if you're a 90s R&B lover just like me, put your favorite song, right? Or your favorite singer in the chat, because I'd love to know. And you may share a song or two that I don't know, gives me an opportunity to uh, explore a little bit when it comes to the music. So share in the comments, in the chat, depending on what platform we're on. I want to hear some of your favorites. All right. So we're going to talk about how to shift your imposter syndrome, right? How to tame that inner critic, what those are, and the impacts of those, but also some practical things that you can do to make those changes. And as I mentioned, some opportunities to get additional support from me if you decide that you want to do that. All right. So let's jump on in there, right? And we're going to have a good time. And so we're just going to start here with a little background because you may be asking yourself, well, okay, so you said you're a psychologist, life coach, or whatever. But what makes you an authority on imposter syndrome? Or, you know, what makes me think that you know anything about this topic? Well, I will tell you that a couple of years ago, unexpectedly, I had a major stroke. And so what you're looking at are a couple of the scans from my major stroke. And before my stroke, I was thriving in my career. As I mentioned, I've been in higher ed, I've been in mental wellness for years. Then I have this unexpected stroke and a major crisis, to say the least, because I experienced some significant cognitive deficits after my stroke. And so all of the things that I thought were my strengths were impacted negatively after my stroke. So at this point, I'm sitting here saying to myself, hey, I've done all this studying, right? All this preparation. I've got these licenses. I've got all these things to create that foundation for my career. And now I'm having a hard time using those skills that I had before. So what am I going to do for my life at this point, right? How do I use those skills if they aren't what they were before? And so after that, well, I feel like I'm still in the process of recovering from that stroke. I have been dealing with some significant side effects that you might consider those to be imposter syndrome, right? And I haven't quite defined what imposter syndrome is, but I'll tell you, whatever it is, I definitely experienced it and still have some residual effects of that after my stroke of wondering, what do I have to offer? And so I want to know, when was the last time that you felt like a fraud or a fake or an imposter? Because we are talking about today all things imposter syndrome, right? So I want you to seriously think about, when was the last time you had this experience, this feeling that, oh, I'm a fraud, or I'm a fake here. I'm really not as good as I think I am. Other people don't think I'm as good as I think I am. I'm an imposter here. All right, because I'm going to ask you to go back to that place, that spot later, which is why I'm trying to get you to think about that now. Now, I told you there were going to be some practical tips here. So to help us with that, I actually have an imposter assessment. I love assessments, by the way. But this is an opportunity to figure out what your imposter syndrome actually looks like. Yeah, what it actually looks like. Because there are different styles, right? There are different types of imposter syndrome. And it can look a little different depending on the person and our experiences. So we want to know specifically what yours looks like. Why? Because, well, how can we address the issue if we don't actually understand the issue? So knowing your style is going to be the first step in helping move you in that direction of dissolving that imposter syndrome that you've been experiencing. So you may feel like, oh, I want to pay attention to the webinar. I don't have time to do this assessment yet. That's fine, because we're actually going to come back to it. But I do want you to make note of the link to the imposter syndrome assessment, okay? Because I definitely want you to go back to it and fill it out. So some of you are like, well, yeah, I can take this assessment, but you still haven't said what imposter syndrome is, right? So, of course, I'm going to talk about that. And so many of you know what I say when I say, oh, that's cap, right? So if you understand that, you know what imposter syndrome is, right? Imposter syndrome includes, it can be a variety of things that that's not even true, right? Like you say you can do that, but I don't think you can really do that. Or, hey, as a person, right, who experienced imposter syndrome, it's that feeling that, you know, yeah, I have a doctorate, right? People call me Dr. T, but I'm just not as good as I used to be. Or maybe I'm not as good as I would like to be. Or I'm not as good as I tell people I am, right? And furthermore, somebody's going to figure it out that, yeah, you've got this doctor, but maybe you don't deserve that, right? Wouldn't that be horrible? Wouldn't that be embarrassing if someone else figured that out, particularly before I figured it out, right? An interesting thing about imposter syndrome, for those of you who like research, um, those of us who went through school and were in gifted and talented back in the day. So, it made some of us who have a few more years on our technically on our birth certificate. Back when we had things like gifted and talented, a lot of those folks who had an experience of gifted and talented, as they got older, experienced what we call imposter syndrome, right? Because that sense of specialness that you got while you were in GT, and then you got out into the big world, right? And realized, oh, wow, there are, you know, in this pond I was in, I was one of the smartest. But then when I got out of for example, my high school, my town or city, I realized, oh, there are other people who are just smart, or those who are even more, right? Even smarter. And it isn't just about, when we talk about imposter syndrome, it's not just about in, intelligence, IQ, right? We can have experience of imposter syndrome around a variety of skills, right? Even athletic, right? Sports. It can be a range of skills and abilities where we may feel like, yeah, you know, I thought I was really good at this, but maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was, right? So we believe that a good number of us experience some type of imposter syndrome at some time in our life, right? Many people are able to manage that imposter syndrome, get over it, quickly go on about their life. But there are others, right? It may be many of you who are sitting in on this webinar who that imposter syndrome actually gets you stuck, right? Where you're not even able to move forward once those feelings of imposter syndrome come up, right? And it's a horrible feeling. And so, of course, I'm going to share some information with you about, well, where does that come from? Why do we even have that, right? Why do why does that feeling even come up? Well, first of all, I'm going to tell you that unfortunately, many of us have been told lies, right? About how we should see ourselves. Some of us, not all of us, but many of us. And so it's about time for us to separate the lies from the truth. All right. So this is your opportunity to clean out your closet, clean it out, throw out all of those hand me downs that you were passed down. And when I say hand me downs, not the literal clothes, but those beliefs, those thoughts that you were passed down from your parents, your siblings, teachers, social media, the world, right? That no longer serve you and in some cases are inaccurate, right? So this isn't your opportunity specifically to rewrite some of those most impactful narratives that you've been living with, but now you can rewrite those and realize that, I can actually write a different story for my life, right? So I'm giving you the freedom to do that. I'm encouraging you to do that, right? After today, because of this information that you're receiving. So you're not convinced just yet, but that's okay. We're going to talk a little bit more. All right. So again, you're wondering, okay, well, you're talking about uh, cleaning out this closet. I think I kind of understand, but I'm still not convinced. So these thoughts, these feelings of imposter syndrome can come from a variety of places. Early experiences that we've had, cultural and societal pressure in the world around us, and inner critic messages that we have received. And if you're asking, well, what's an inner critic? All of us have an inner critic, right? The part of us that tells us negative things about ourselves growing up. Now, I promise you, we all have an inner critic. But here's the thing about the inner critic. Some people have a small inner critic or a very soft speaking inner critic. And so because the inner critic is, it's easy for that person to ignore those negative thoughts and beliefs that they have that pop up, right? It's easy for them to throw those out, ignore it, right? Keep going. Now, here's the thing. Others of us have an inner critic who is loud, right? They are so loud. They never shut up. They're always saying things like, you can't do that. You're not smart enough to do that. Why are you even attempting that? I don't think you should be doing that. Well, I don't think you should speak up in this situation. Nobody really wants to hear what you have to say. Well, your idea isn't as important as what other people are saying, right? All kinds of things like that. And each of you probably has your own set of thoughts or beliefs that comes from your inner critic. And you recognize those beliefs and thoughts when you hear them because you hear them so frequently. So the same thing, some of us who have this inner critic, again, they never shut up. So we hear it all the time. Whereas other people, their inner critic, I guess they take a lot of naps because they don't really hear their inner critic speaking very frequently. So for those of us who have an inner critic who is loud or always on the job, it can be hard to let go of those negative thoughts and messages, right? And so we're going to talk a little bit about how you may be able to handle some of those, right? Quiet, tame some of those inner critics, right? So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience. I told you that I had experienced a major stroke a couple of years ago, but even before my stroke, there were some things, some early experiences that initiated some of those inner critic messages that I received over time. Yeah, unfortunately. So I grew up in a place where guys drove dualies, uh, that the trucks that you can see here. The women wore Rocky Mountain. Now, here's the thing. I never had either of those. I never had a dually, nor did I ever uh, get a pair of Rocky Mountains. But I never did. And so some of those experiences were a part of what started just one of those inner critics that I had, right? Because I knew it was very clear when I was growing up and in school that there were significant differences between me and my classmates, that they had experiences that I didn't have, they had resources that I didn't have, right? Um, and there were some clear ways that financially, socially, demographically, that I was different than the majority of my classmates. And so those experiences often made me feel like that umbrella that sticks out. Like, yeah, it's pretty clear that I'm the different one here. And those experiences led to other beliefs, right? And thoughts about, well, maybe I'm not as smart as they are. Maybe I'm not as good, right? Maybe I don't belong here. And besides that, right? Besides that, some of you, some of you may have other types of experiences that have contributed to your imposter syndrome and your inner critic, right? Things like teachers, having a teacher who's harsh, for example, um, getting low grades, or other messages that tell you that you're not smart enough, or that you didn't behave well enough, right? Your conduct marks weren't very good. Some of you may have been latchkey kids like me and my sister. We were taught to be so independent because our parents were working, right? And so when we came home from school came home after school, usually our parents were working still. And so learning how to take care of ourselves and cook and those kinds of things, make your own meals, taking care of siblings, right, are things that contributed to that sense of independence in some ways, and other beliefs and thoughts. Some of you may have grown up with a mother like mine as well, who seemed to dress well, speak well, right? She was well liked. Her house was always clean. It seemed like everything that she did was the right thing. And I always wondered, oh my gosh, like, how do I live up to that? How do I be as consistent with that, right? Of always looking good, being good, right? So those are some of the examples of the types of things that can contribute to your imposter syndrome. So I'll go back to that question from the beginning where I asked, hey, when was the last time that you felt like a fraud, a fake, an imposter? Mm-hmm. Right? Connecting to those experiences are important because, again, that's going to help you to understand how to shift what you need to shift and some possibilities for engaging in that shift, right? Initiating that shift. And so you're like, well, what do you mean? What do you mean? Shift what? We're talking about shifting your mindset, right? Shifting your mindset from being a fraud, right, to actually making that your fuel. Words and thoughts are so powerful, right? So I want you to start focusing on words and thoughts that can become your fuel instead of those things that are holding you back, right? So shift, right, is an important word here. We've said it a few times already, and you'll probably hear that word again before we finish. And so the first shift or transformation that I'm encouraging is to transform your fear. Most of us who deal with imposter syndrome, one of the main emotions that we have to learn how to manage is fear, right? Fear of what? Well, you probably have the best answer for that. But helping you move that fear is kind of a shift in your perspective here. Many of us have been taught, right? And it's one of those things that you might have to throw out of that closet, throw it away. Because most of us have been brought up to believe that anxiety was a bad thing. The thing that we call anxiety when we feel it, right? Most of us feel like that feeling, those experiences, those sensations are bad things, or that they're telling us about something bad, right? Whereas that's not always true. So there are some feelings of worry and concern that are connected to anxiety. And that worry and concern really is something that we should be uh, concerned about. But sometimes many of those same sensations get thrown into that anxiety category. And those aren't necessarily bad things, right? Because what we are labeling as anxiety is coming from a place of motivation. It's coming from a place of excitement. It's coming from a place of interest, right? It's coming from a place of novelty. And so it may all necessarily be bad. It's just different, right? So sometimes we have these sensations and it's about different, not necessarily about bad stuff, right? So getting a little bit more comfortable with that anxiety part of you and recognizing that those sensations and those feelings aren't always bad feelings, right? So one of the first steps from transforming that fear is connecting with that sensation of anxiety and kind of breaking that down, right? Of what's really the origin of that. So while we're on that path, we also want to reframe that narrative, right? We talked about rewriting that narrative. So here are a few ways that you can do that. All right. So we've talked about imposter syndrome. Again, we assume, hey, imposter syndrome is a bad thing. don't want that. I need to get rid of that. Instead, though, right, that imposter syndrome is a function of your drive to grow and learn, to become better, right? And so having that thought, that feeling that we call imposter syndrome is a function of some very positive, helpful things that drive you to grow, learn, and become better. So it's there, but does it necessarily mean something bad? Right? So we're going to reframe that imposter syndrome is a function of your drive to grow and learn and become better. And those are great things, right? For those of us who have some patterns of perfectionism in our lives, I told you about my mom who always seemed so perfect in all the ways, right? And that was the model I had growing up. For some of us, that perfectionism, what we would label as that perfectionism, is a display of our passion to get it right? And to be our best, whether that's at school, whether that's at work, whether that's as a mother, as a father, as a friend, right? We may have this passion to want to get it right? And that's a good thing. Now, we're going to talk about how to manage that and balance those things, right? But we're going to start from this place of, hey, that wanting to get it right and be your best is coming from a great place, right? And so, lastly, that inner critic that we talked about, right? That thing, that voice in your head that you hear, many of you probably every day, that is saying no and bad and stop and not good enough, right? That inner critic that you're hearing, that voice, may actually be your misunderstood protector. Your misunderstood protector, right? Misunderstood in the sense that we have taken their encouragement or their warning as bad things, but I think we have maybe misunderstood them in some situations, right? Right? Because that inner critic and that misunderstood protector is a part of you, right, who wanted the best from you. And so, did they always give the message in the best ways that you wanted to receive it? It seems like it wasn't. It was coming, though, from a good place, right? And so we misunderstood that protector as they were a harm in some way, right? That their intent was to harm, when perhaps that misunderstood protector did not have an intention to harm us, right? So we have to go back to some of those early beliefs and thoughts and experiences and give ourselves an opportunity to reframe those and reinterpret those to see, hey, is it possible that there was a different reason for this, or there's a different application that I can use for this, right? So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what that protection of your self perception and your self identity can look like, right? Besides just reframing those narratives, we have to make sure that as we go through as adults now to protect our self perception and our self identity, meaning the way that I think about myself, I'm responsible now, right? I'm responsible to for protecting how I believe about myself, how I look at myself, what I think about myself, right? That's now my responsibility. So when I'm at home and somebody rings the doorbell, I don't know about you, but I can just go to the door and open the door, right? Uh, if nobody's called to prepare me for their visit and I hear that doorbell, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to the blinds, right? And peek through that window and say, who's that? Now, a lot of us have rings now, so you don't even have to go to the window, right? You could just go to the ring. Either way, right? But the same way you do that at home, you stop and you assess before you let people in. You need to have that same level of intention, right? About what you're letting in to your sense of self, your identity. Just because somebody tells you something about you doesn't mean that you have to internalize that, right? And so, again, I'm going to give you some tips on how you can use that and figure out should I let that in or not, right? So, give me just a couple of minutes and we'll get to that. So, with that idea of that imposter syndrome, right? It's helpful if you can meet your imposter, right? Whether it's that inner critic that you have, but just getting to know that part of you that feels like an imposter and really try to understand that imposter, right? Where it's coming from. What's your purpose, right? So, what is that imposter or even that inner critic? What are they protecting you from? You ever thought about that? Is your imposter or your inner critic protecting you from laziness, narcissism, complacency, right? Your imposter is saying, hey, stay hungry, stay humble as well, right? But keep growing. So you want to find out what is your imposter possibly protecting you from, and what are they trying to tell you about you and about the world, all right? And so listen to your imposter instead of assuming that, hey, that imposter is horrible, bad, it doesn't mean me any good, right? There may be some very valuable information that you can get from that imposter. As long as you're willing to reframe that, right? And actually understand where it's coming from and again, what its purpose really is. So listen to that imposter and what it may be trying to tell you, right? Because then you can use that to transform the things that started out as your negative imposter syndrome, right? From those hidden strengths to actual superpowers to you. And you're like, well, what do you mean by that? Well, of course, I'm going to tell you what I mean by that, right? Shifting that from this idea of being a fraud and those hidden strengths hidden because you weren't even taking advantage of them, turning those into that fuel that I mentioned and your superpower. So, those of you who tend to over prepare, right, because you have those perfectionism patterns, you tend to over prepare, over analyze all the things. That over preparing is a part of your drive to improve, right? It's a function of your drive to improve, to constantly learn in some cases, right? That I'm not going to just sunk into complacency. For those of you who have those experiences of a fear of failure, right? That fear of failure, we can shift that to your likelihood to be reliable. Because if I don't want to fail, guess what? I'm going to do what I need to do to make sure that whatever needs to happen is going to happen. And so you then end up being perceived as reliable, dependable. You're the one to count on, right? And so those of you who experience self-doubt, I know it doesn't feel good, right? But you have that self-doubt possibly because you're good at finding the gap or the crack in advance. You have this particular eye, right, for quality control. And so that superpower that you have is making sure that you're directing that at the things that you should be directing that at, right? Not overly criticizing yourself, but using those skills to help others, right? Um, improve your work, whatever that is. So those of us who have this sense of an imposter syndrome have these particular set of skills, right? That we can actually use if we direct it in the right direction. So let's take a little practice with that. All right. If you're the type or you have a friend who often says, I just feel like I have to be the strong one in my family, right? We're going to shift that. Remember, we're rewriting these narratives, right? Remember, words and thoughts are powerful. So we want to make sure that we're using them for fuel. So we used to say, hey, I have to be the strong one. What are we going to say now? Now we're going to say, I use a broad definition of strength that encompasses rest, support, help, and submission. All right? And this is just an example. You don't necessarily have to take that one. This is an example of how we can shift these beliefs and these words, right? To shift them to fuel to support our superpower. Okay? So some of you, maybe you're not necessarily, you've never said, I have to be the strong one, but maybe you said, oh, I don't know enough, either at your job or in your educational pursuit or in your relationship, right? Who knows? And so we're going to shift that from, I don't know enough to, I'm passionate about being prepared and informed, right? That's important to me. I want to know all the things that I need to know to get things done. right? So if you are one of those feeling imposter syndrome, and at times you feel the weight of that imposter syndrome, I want to give you a quick 3 tips for um, counter countering that weight of imposter syndrome and building resilience. Okay. So how do we build resilience? Number one, we've got to name the thought. It's important to actually acknowledge what the belief is, what the thought, the belief, the value is. Saying what it is, acknowledging what I'm actually thinking, positive or negative, right? Starting with that acknowledgement of what those things are, right? Name the thought and then shift those thoughts, right? So rewrite them if I need to, reframe it if I need to do that, right? So name the thought, then shift the thought. And a great second step is practicing some self compassion. It's a great way to quiet that inner critic. When that inner critic tells you you're not doing enough, you're not as good enough, you're not working hard enough, right? Your grade wasn't high enough, whatever it is, I'm going to tell that inner critic, I am practicing some self compassion here, some empathy for myself, right? That assessing my capacity, right? And acknowledging the work that I've put in and what I've already accomplished, right? Applauding that. So then the third step, which I think they all go together, all right, the third step is to connect with truth tellers. All right, so think back to a couple of minutes ago when I was talking about peeping through the blinders, right? Because we're filtering out, we're screening out. There are some people who don't know you well, and there are other people who don't mean you well, right? So if there are people who don't know you well and those who don't mean you well, you can screen out, filter out both of those categories and say, well, you know what? I'm not going to prioritize listening to that information or that advice because you don't know me well enough, nor do you mean me well enough for me to elevate that information. So connect with people who actually know you and those who understand you, right? And want to affirm you. Now, does that mean you can't listen to constructive criticism? Of course you can, right? From those who are informed, right? So people who know you well and understand where that information fits in context, and the people who really care for you, right? And mean you well, right? Then that information can be used to affirm you and increase your awareness, right? So if you use those 3 tips, name the thought, practice self compassion, and connect with truth tellers are all things that you can use in conjunction to build your own resilience in this world, right? So when the weight of imposter syndrome feels like it's too much, overwhelming, right? Think back to these 3 steps for building resilience. All right. So our last tip is affirmation, right? Um, Dr. T is an affirmation coach. I am all about affirmations. I love affirmations. And I will tell you, affirmations are not just fluff, right? Affirmations actually help reroute neural pathways in the brain. We think about things like grief, loss, trauma, right? Negative experiences. Affirmations can help heal, right? Us cognitively and emotionally. And so I have a formula for building affirmation that I would love to um, connect you with at some point if we continue to work together. But I encourage you to connect with affirmations regularly. Writing them out is great, even better if you say them out loud. So I'm asking you to practice creating at least one affirmation right now before we finish this content today. I am blank, something you've learned from our conversation today. Or I bring, right? What do you bring? One of those superpowers that you thought about. Or I create, right? What are you creating? I'll give you just a second to think about your affirmation. Again, I encourage you to write it out and say it out loud, right? I am a superpower in general, right? That is my affirmation for today. And I've got some affirmations on my shirt, right? She builds, right? Is one of them. She owns, she invests, technically can be considered affirmations as well. So I hope you were able to identify at least one that works for you. Because these were my aspirations for today, right? To help you understand what imposter syndrome is and how to address imposter syndrome, to reframe your experiences of perfectionism and self-doubt, to turn struggle into superpower, and to tame that inner critic, give you some tips for that. And I wanted to leave you with some tools for resilience, right? And so we did a lot. Can you believe it? We did a lot today. So give yourself a hand for all the work you've done for today. I promised you that I was going to give you the imposter syndrome link again for those of you who didn't want to get distracted by your assessment while we were going through the majority of the content. All right, so I encourage you to complete the imposter syndrome. You can figure out what your style is, your imposter syndrome style is. And if you want to learn more about your specific style after you've completed the assessment and you want to know more about your results, you can reach out to me and schedule your own one-on-one coaching session where we can talk through your results, what they mean, and how to shift, right? How to shift your imposter syndrome into your superpowers and tame that inner critic. Because again, we all have one, right? But I have more information for you. Okay, so don't leave just now, because I've got a little bit more. And just a few minutes, right? Most of the content we've gone through, but I have a couple of gifts to share, right? So, imposter syndrome, and if we get in the habit of listening to that inner critic regularly, guess what? It can cause some negative side effects or consequences. And you've experienced some of those, I'm sure, already, right? Those things can cause you to feel overwhelmed and overworked. Anybody feeling like that? Yeah. Can motivate you to wear a mask in different situations, either at work, right? Or when you're hanging out with friends, or in your relationship, right? Or in other spaces. That imposter syndrome can cause you to be somebody that you're not. And honestly, somebody you don't even want to be, right? It can cause you to feel weighed down. I've already mentioned that, right? The burden of that. It can cause things like anxiety, depression, resentment. Those are just a few of the things that can be the result after, again, if you have felt like an imposter syndrome over time, or have been listening to that inner critic for too long. It can prevent you from enjoying your life overall. And I will tell you, right, going through a crisis like a stroke definitely will bring it to your awareness that life is too short, right? Life is too short to go through life and not feel fulfilled, right? To not be able to actually enjoy this life, the life that you've been blessed with, right? And so the last, well, you know, this is just some of the common side effects, but you can probably create your own list. But this is the last of my list of my bullets here, that imposter syndrome and listening to that inner critic can separate you from the people that you care about the most, right? And so these are all of the parts of your life and your experiences that can be impacted negatively by that imposter syndrome. Yeah. And again, you can probably add some more on your own list. But here's the thing, you, 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 you can overcome perfectionism. You deserve to bring your full self every situation. You do, right? You deserve to reduce your sense of your role overwhelm. Look, role overload and your overwhelm that you've been experiencing. You deserve to reduce the hold that perfectionism may have had on your life. You deserve to learn how to live more authentically. You deserve to empower yourself to align with your own values, your own interests, your own needs. I want that for you. You also deserve to have a squad that's just for you, who can offer you support and accountability moving forward. You deserve all of that. And I honestly want all of that for you. So, what if you could participate in a more intensive experience that would help you do all of those things? What do you think the value of all of that would be for you? I will tell you, I wish I had something like this for me a few years ago. I really could have used it. And so, because of that, I am offering that opportunity to you to overcome imposter syndrome using the Embrace Imperfect You program. And you're like, well, what's that? Well, it's a 4-week experience for people who are over functioners like you and me, who are overachievers and perfectionists, and those who have very loud inner critics. Maybe I'm just speaking about myself, right? And so all of those things, any of them, it's for you. And so this 4-week experience will occur Tuesdays in a couple of weeks. It starts in a couple of weeks, so you don't have much time. But there will be on Tuesdays at 6 o'clock p.m. Central. Pay attention to the time and the time zone. So 6 o'clock Central. So that should be 7 Eastern, 5 Mountain, 4, unfortunately, 4 for Pacific. I know. So starting on June 3rd, and hopefully I got the date right, the 3rd, right? So we'll be weekly for 4 weeks. We're gonna hit it and quit it, as they say. The 3rd, 10th, 17th, and 24th. You can go ahead and sign up, right? If you're interested, if you're ready to embrace the imperfect you, I go ahead, sign up. I'm waiting for you. Now, you might be asking, some of you are like, well, okay, so 4-week experience, but what does that include? Well, I know some of you need to know all the things. So, of course, I'm going to tell you what all the things are, right? So, what you get 4 weeks of leveling up your authenticity with me, Dr. T, right? We're going to talk about all things imposter syndrome, inner critic stuff, right? So you'll get 60-minute group coaching sessions each week for those 4 weeks. And we'll try to make sure we have time for question and answer each session. You're also going to get a complimentary, meaning free, right? Complimentary one-on-one coaching session to elevate your expectations and motivation for the session. And those are with Dr. T, right? There will also be a digital workbook that will be included, specially priced for this course. You will create your own personal customized action plan to help you extend your learning and add some substance to your goals with shifting, right? Some of these thoughts and beliefs. And then you get to experience synergy with other like-minded high achievers, professionals like you who are ready, right, to embrace the change. You'll also have access to me, right? So you can reach out and connect to me in the coaching group platform. So you'll be able to talk to me and get support throughout the 4-week experience. Isn't that awesome? Right? And so, again, Now, what do you think all of this is worth, right? I think it is invaluable, right? But what are you willing to invest for an experience like this? The Embrace Imperfect You program, if I were to price these individually, it would be worth over 1,500 for the program. For the individual not one-on-one, the individual coaching sessions, the group sessions, the workbook, the customized action plan, the community group for those if you were to have a monthly subscription to the group, and the access to Dr. P, right? Talking about myself in the third person, which is crazy. Um, but all of those things, if I were to price those individually, would be valued at over, this is modest, 1,500. Right? If I actually price them, would be well over 1,500. But guess what? It's a holiday weekend, so I'm not even gonna do y'all like that, right? But I wanted to share with you some of the things that other people have said about our experiences together. You were personable, relatable, passion, energy, right? I learned so much from the seminar, and it has helped me to release my perfectionism, which is awesome, right? I love the transparency of the message, very valuable. Your workshops are so uplifting and inspiring and motivational. I will tell you, I did not pay these folks to say these things. They are so kind. But these are what other people have gotten from the work in the past. So, do you want that? And I told you it's a holiday weekend. So, guess what? I, mm-hmm, something about this is not right. But we'll come back to that because I think I just messed up one of the prices, but that's okay. So, oh, I'm just kidding. I was confused. And you know what? I'm probably not even gonna edit this out. In the past, I would have taken the time to edit it out, but you know what? Life happens. So, all right. So, those of you who want to work with me and take your imposter syndrome assessment and get your results, talk through your results, get some tips for how to address your imposter syndrome and your inner critic. The price for a 45-minute one-on-one coaching session with Dr. T is on this slide, right? So you're going to get all of those things, be able to ask me some questions directly, and hopefully launch your journey on addressing your imposter syndrome. I'm offering a discounted rate for a single session. All right. So my discounted single session rate, particularly for this imposter syndrome session, 225. All right. So you can contact me to sign up for a single 45-minute one-on-one coaching session. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, those of you who say, you know what? I think I want the 4 weeks. Well, of course you do, because I told you all the things that comes with that, right? So, if you want the 4 weeks, remember all the things that I said that comes with that. The 4 weeks of leveling up, right, in the uh, group coaching sessions, 60 minutes for each of those each week. Plus, you get to ask questions for 4 weeks. You get a complimentary one-on-one coaching session, right? Just you and me to support your 4 week program. The digital workbook, right? The customized action plan, the synergy and community that you get, and I think the access to Dr. T by itself is valuable here. All of that though, you're gonna get because I'm feeling fancy. All of that for $297, which is a steal, I promise you, right? It's a steal. Um, you can go ahead and enroll if you're interested. You should. All right. Now, some of you are saying, well, you know what? The way my bank account is set up, right? I understand because I'm there a lot of the time, right? There is a payment plan available where you don't have to pay it all up front, but you can pay a quarter of the amount each week until it's paid out, right? So there is an additional processing um, fee for the payment plan, um, but you're able to pay it out in small pieces. Because I understand sometimes, you got to wait till mhm, the next paycheck. I understand. So yes, there is a payment plan option there. But I'm not even going to stop there because I told you it's a holiday weekend and I'm praying that I get some barbecue, right? So I want to put some positive energy out there into the universe for this weekend. So I'm offering a fast action bonus and a memorial holiday discount, right? If you want to barbecue and throw that in, let me know. No, I'm just saying. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So I'm having a fast action bonus and Memorial Holiday discount. I'm slashing the original price. Uh-huh. 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 I sure am. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, this price is only available until Monday, May 26th at 11:59 p.m. No extensions, don't ask, right? Midnight on Tuesday is gone. Okay? So the discounted price, $100 off top. All right? If you sign up and pay, you get 100 off. And you know what? I'm not even gonna stop there. I'm not even gonna stop there because guess what I'm gonna do for you? If you pay, sign up and pay by 11:59 p.m. Central, mind you, on Monday, which is the holiday, right? You will also get an additional complimentary, meaning free, an additional free 25-minute affirmation coaching session with more, with me. hmm So those of you who take advantage of the fast action bonus and the holiday discount, you get a lower price and you get not just one, but two one-on-one with Dr. P. In addition to the 4 weekly group coaching sessions. I mean, I don't know how you can pass that up to get a discount and get an additional coaching session that technically, if you were to coach with me individually without being a part of the program, you would pay definitely more than that, right? So let me remind you of what you're getting, right? Let's recap a little bit. We're talking about overcoming imposter syndrome through embracing the imperfect you. Because I love you just the way you are. hmm We're talking about a 4 week experience for any of those of you who are overfunctioning, high achievers, perfectionists, inner critic, self-critical, any of those things, right? 4 week experience with me starting in just a couple of weeks so you don't have long to overthink about this. You can enroll now, today. It's ready for you. I'm ready for you, right? Let's get into it. And so we want to reduce that sense of overload and overwhelm, reduce the hold that perfectionism has had on your life, give you that freedom to live more authentically, empower you to, hey, let me align my life with my values, my interests, my needs, the wants, and get a squad that is there who understands what I'm going through and is willing to support me and offer me accountability in all of this, right? So all of that is what you get. hmm All of it is yours. All of it is yours if you pay the single payment price of $297. Remember, there is a payment plan that's available where you can pay a little bit each week, right? And also, if you can get your wallet lined up, right? Right? Then you can take advantage of that fast action bonus and that Memorial Holiday discount, right? So you get not only the discount in that price, but because of that fast action, people who are ready, I'm gonna give you an additional free complimentary, right? 25-minute affirmation coaching session. Mm-hmm. All right. So that discount 197. Remember, you've got to pay that. There's no payment plan on a fast action, right? So you've got to pay a single payment. You've got to sign up and pay by Tuesday. Oh, just kidding. See, I'm about to get you all confused. By Monday, May 26th, because that's Memorial Day. Monday, May 26th by 11:59 p.m. Yeah, you can do that. You can do that, right? So those that's everything that you get. If you this webinar increased your awareness, your insight, and you're saying, you know what? I want to let go of that imposter syndrome. I want to learn how to quiet that inner critic. I want to be able to show up, right? And be myself, let go of the mask. I want to live a life, a fulfilling life. I want to do all those things. And I want you to support figuring out how to do that yesterday, right? Then I encourage you to reach out. You can enroll now. As I told you, you can go ahead and enroll. And if you have questions or if you're still overthinking like we do, then reach out, right? Reach out to me on social media or on email and let's talk, right? Let's see what your questions are, what your concerns are. And um, ideally, we can get you on this fast action, right? Bonus because there ain't nothing better than getting a discount and getting something extra, right? So that's what I have for you. Thank you for joining me for Show Up today, right? Shifting imposter syndrome into your superpower and taming your inner critic. I have enjoyed talking with you all today. I'm looking forward to working with y'all on embrace, right? We'll just call it embrace because we don't want to say the whole thing. But embrace imperfect you. I'm looking forward to working with some of you. Share, right? Share the love. If you have some other colleagues that you know, some friends that you know, hey, they're dealing with the same thing, let them know, right? That way, hey, I already know somebody who's in the program with you. And if you have questions or concerns, reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. All right, enjoy your weekend, your holiday. I hope you get some barbecue and I hope I get some too. And then I'll be looking ready to see y'all in June. All right. All right. Well, take care of yourself. Please